it's not going to be disruptive, but that might give you an extra cue just to, even if you can't see the words perfectly, you'll know that something's shifted. So I'll happily to do that at the same time. If I could just get the judges to introduce themselves and specify any particular preferences for pronouns and their country of affiliation, that would be very helpful. Anyone can dive in first.
I'm Mark. I'm an IA, so I'm and
thank you.
Fine.
Great, thanks. And
I'm Jeremiah Sechi. I'm an IA, but from Ghana.
Okay.
No preference.
No problem. And I think have we got a trainee judge in with us? Nope. Okay. I am Beth. I'm Beth Warburton. I'm representing Wales for the purposes of this tournament, and I am happy to be addressed in whichever way is helpful, but she, her, whatever is absolutely fine. But don't worry, I won't take offense if someone calls me something different. Right, so let me just get my cards up ready. I'm going to endeavour to keep my camera on for the majority of the debate. I may click it off temporarily in between the debates just to, when I'm making my notes, and other judges are welcome to do the same. But if everyone could endeavour to keep their cameras on where it's feasibly possible, equally team members, if you can keep your cameras on as much as you can, it helps the other speakers, but totally understand if connectivity is an issue and you're unable to do so. Okay, right, so without further ado, I would like to invite the first speaker from the proposition to open the debate, and I'll click the stopwatch the moment you start speaking.
Am I audible?
You are.
Okay. There have been considerable developments in artificial intelligence in recent years. The law, like every area of society and industry, will almost certainly be impacted by artificial intelligence in a considerable manner. Computer technology has in fact infused most parts of legal practice, including document preparation, legal research, and even court filing. Algorithms are also infusing the more complex areas of law, including taxation, social security, and immigration. Proposition believes that criminal sentencing should not be an exception. Some definitions. Criminal sentencing is when a judge decides on the appropriate punishment after a defendant is convicted or pleads guilty. Human judgment is when humans give up judgment on other human beings. And a computer algorithm, simply put, is a set of instructions designed to perform a specific task. As proposition, we have identified four main problems in today's debate. One, there is a discrepancy of sentencing for criminals under identical criminal evidence and circumstances. I'll tell you that classism plays a role in the type of sentence a criminal gets. Criminals receive different sentences for crimes committed under the same circumstances to their quality of defense. A judge is more likely to be swayed by a lawyer who enters the courtroom looking all fancy in his $4,000 suit, defending a rich entrepreneur, when compared to a public defender who walks into the courtroom in defense of a poor farmer. Panel, what you need to note here is that it's more likely that rich entrepreneur will get a lighter sentence compared to that farmer, and note that this is under the same evidence and circumstances. I'll tell you that this discrepancy exists because of human judgment and perception being a part of the criminal sentencing process too. Harsher and longer punishments for non-violent crimes. We tell you that people who aren't necessarily a threat to society, people who don't necessarily commit violent crimes, face harsher, lengthier, and unjustified sentences because of certain political inferences surrounding that particular crime. Let's take an example of drug possession. A human judge is more likely to be pressured by the societal norms and the environment of drug dealers, the political environment surrounding drugs, harsher retribution than people who commit far more violent crimes. Additionally, this leads to the unnecessary overcrowding of jails with people whose crimes don't necessarily prove that they should be in jail, making the justice system in itself ineffective. Three, elitist sentencing. We tell you that oftentimes the more influential you are, the more likely you are to receive a lighter sentence. And oftentimes the outcome of this sentence does not reflect the quality of the crime you've committed. Humans are susceptible and fall victim to social influences and popularity. Let's take an example of Oscar Pistorius, a South African who was popular and highly influential, who was sentenced to just 6 years for manslaughter. But if that was ordinary Harry, he would have prison for life, which is the sentence for manslaughter in most justice systems. I tell you, this susceptibility to perceptions of humans takes away from the credibility of the sentencing decision. And 4, racial bias. I tell you that in societies where there are minorities who are of different nationalities, there's a disproportionate number of minorities getting harsher sentences. Let's take America as an example, where Black people are the minority and are receiving harsher sentences compared to the white majority population for the same crimes committed, because of the fact that human judges how these sentences are susceptible and are likely to be swayed by external factors such as the color of your skin. Now, moving on to some characterization in terms of 1, the purpose of the criminal justice system. Study the criminal justice system. The reason why the state creates things like courts and prisons in the first place has 4 main reasons. 1, protect individuals. 2, to optimize social outcomes by decreasing the occurrences of crime. 3, to make sure that there's a swift and fair justice delivering process. And 4, strike a good balance between rehabilitation and retribution. Our world is a world where people feel safe because we optimize the criminal justice system. 2, when do we opt to entirely change a specific system? 1, we opt to change a certain system when the current system becomes ineffective in administering the very thing it was made to administer, which in our case is justice. And 2, when we become ethically obliged to change the system because the current system is too biased and discriminatory to make any decisions. 3, why just the criminal sentencing decisions part of the justice system and not the entire justice system, right? We tell you the justice system is mainly made up of 2 major parts: conviction and sentencing. We are okay with human judgment being a part of the conviction process, but not the sentencing process. I say this because when a criminal is yet to be convicted, there are a lot of things that go into that process, things such as police investigations and trials. And these processes have their own policies and regulations that make them as fair and just and effective as possible. The whole trial process has a lot of people involved. The jury, lawyers, and judges.
Ma'am?
It is a much more inefficient process because it is much harder to influence or sway so many people at once compared to if it is just 1 or 2 people, right? But when a criminal is being sentenced, the system starts to become inefficient because there's usually 2 judges involved, or sometimes just 1. When it comes to primary court, just 1 human has to be a criminal. So they can be super inefficient in the process. So the point is, wouldn't in any way be taking away from the trial process, right? Retrials and reopening cases become irrelevant because we're only talking about sentences today. How will our mechanism work, right? What info will we put into these algorithms? 1, the rule of law. We tell you that statutes and ordinances of that country's legal system will be
Point.
in as information. We tell you that with this, we're better able to take and mitigate circumstances, right? But we're able to cater to things such as whether a criminal should get a minimum or maximum sentence. Because no matter how different the circumstances of a crime are, the rule of law on those circumstances will always be the same. 2, evidence in hand. And 3, criminal history of the convict. How will this work? It will work by combining large amounts of data with fast processing and intelligent algorithms, allowing the software to learn automatically from patterns or features in the data. It will work through commands and by finding a pattern of correlation in the data it's been fed. But what is even more unique about it is that it is also good at picking up causation patterns in the data, something a human judge cannot do without falling victim to perceptions and biases. So it is good at identifying the 2 main principles of a crime: what caused the crime, and are there any correlating patterns in the circumstances of this crime with the law or the evidence, and then use all the data about a sentence. Another thing we tell you about computer algorithms is that they're able to store and process so much more information than a human because a human's brain can only store so much information. But additionally, they learn through machine learning. Over time, they're able to better understand and adapt to the changing political climate or changing societal trends and norms, and are even better able to adapt or make changes to things that not be acceptable in society. This 1, bias and discrimination. Being human is our best attribute, but it is also our worst attribute. We're susceptible to perception, people's demeanor, their influence. It all affects us as explained in the problem statement. Humans have emotions which play a role when it comes to making certain decisions. These emotions are exactly what we don't need when making criminal sentencing decisions. We can't pretend that Black men are not facing harsher punishments in America than white men. We can't pretend drug dealers are spending longer time in jail than third-degree murderers. We can't pretend that men who work in the law have not been able to get off the hook for crimes simply because they work within the system. We tell you these elements are not present in computer algorithms, which serves for a far more effective justice system. But before I go any further, I'll take your POI. Seeing as there is no
Are you going to use such algorithms pre-criminal sentencing, i.e. are you going to use algorithms to determine whether the
criminal sentencing, not during the conviction process, only during the criminal sentencing decision part of the justice system? 2, time. We tell you that because of how widespread crime is in societies or communities, you find usually dates. Why sentencing decisions in terms of dates are not swift. This stops the effective working justice system. Cases are dragged on and on. We tell you that this is detrimental to the administration of justice. It's not effective because workers are overwhelmed with the number of cases that need to be tried and then sentenced. also means that sometimes criminals who are flight risks or criminals who are waiting to be tested after being tried without bail have to spend an unnecessary amount of time in jail waiting for the sentencing to be scheduled, which at times takes even around 3 to 4 months. So in these instances, a judge who would take longer amount of time would be eliminated from this situation, while a computer algorithm would take be much faster. And fairness, we tell you that when computer algorithms are used, even when a criminal opts to appeal to a higher court or to a different court, hopes that his sentence will be reduced because another judge may fall victim to his emotions, the algorithm will give the same sentence because there will be an equal and fair metric for sentencing. We tell you dispassion is the very essence of justice, and justice without dispassion is always at risk of not being. Thank you.
Time. Thank you very much to the speaker. I'll give the judges all an opportunity to look over their notes for a minute or a few seconds, and then we'll move on to the first speaker from the opposition.
Second opposition, if you can look at the chat, please.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, I was telling our second speaker to look at the chat because she wasn't looking at it. I'm a debater.
Right.
Thank you.
No problem. As I have half the screen being shared with you guys and half the screen with a stopwatch, I'm not checking the chats as regularly as other people might be. So if I miss something and one of my judges could let me know, that'd be really helpful. There's only so many things I can have open on one screen. Right. Just give me one moment. Okay. Right, I would now thank you very much for the first opening speech. I'd now like to move over to side opposition and their opening speaker to present their case.
Yeah, I just need a second.
No problem. I'll start whenever you're ready.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Are you ready?
Yeah. My
Great.
speech starts in 3, 2, 1. 3 things in this speech. Firstly, address our framework. Secondly, respond to what the team on the other side of the House has mentioned in this debate so far. Thirdly, I will be delivering my substantive. But firstly, I will be delivering our framework. We acknowledge the existence of a problem in the criminal sentencing, which is disparity and bias. However, we think that using an algorithm will increase it as it does more harm than good. With that said, our mechanisms to improve justice in the court are A, allowing people to file lawsuits against the biased judges. And this would be the case in the cases of glaring bias, only then will the lawsuits be filed. B, improving the selection process of judges and enforcing strict laws when regarding race judgment, i.e. suspending judges in cases of bias detected by the supervising committee. We would like also to note that, that judges have as well an incentive to protect their reputation and keep their jobs. So it's more likely that they are going to be adhering to what these strict laws tell them and what these supervising committees tell them. C, selecting diverse panels, i.e. judges who come from different backgrounds, so different contextualization and perspectives can be proposed during solving complex cases. Notice that this is nothing far-fetched or hard to be implemented, as it is already happening in many countries, like the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, etc. What are our burdens in today's debate? We have to prove that using algorithms in criminal sentencing does more harm than good, and that our approach is the one to actually start paving the way into creating a fairer criminal justice system. Our arguments will be discussed as follows. Firstly, replacing human judgment with algorithms in the criminal justice system is dangerous, which will be addressed in my speech. Secondly, the unique role of human judges, which will be addressed in Alma's speech. Now, before I move on to delivering my substantive, I'll be responding to what the team on the other side of the House has mentioned so far in this debate, which was extremely wishy-washy. We asked them in a POI, are they going to use such algorithms pre-criminal sentencing? No, thank you. I.e., if algorithms are also going to be used in determining whether this person is guilty or innocent. They said no, only in sentencing. Well, they tell us that the human judgment is biased. This means that the pre-sentencing will also be faulty and will also be biased. They never solve this on their side of the House. On our side of the House, we fix this problem from its roots, meaning we do not send innocent people to jail. They do that, and that's quite problematic. I mean, if their model that they base their whole case on this model is very implausible and has a lot of loopholes. I don't think that they're in a place to solve the problem in the first place. On their model, further, I never get what their model is really about because it was quite implausible. What exactly are these guidelines? Why is this model exclusive to their side of the House? And why not setting guidelines to human judges as well? They never explain to us the exclusiveness of their solution. They come up and tell us, oh, the human judgment is so bad, and suddenly tell us that the algorithm would be the solution. They never give us one example of a successful algorithm. And actually, this is quite problematic because I don't think that works in real life at all. And there is a gap of links between what these team on the other side of the House tell us. Now I have one more refutation, but it will be integrated in my argument. Moving on to our first argument, I'm going to prove two things in this argument. Firstly, how using computer algorithms is very harmful. Secondly, how human judgment can be replaced and our approach is justified. First point, using computer algorithm is very harmful. But before I move on to explain it, I'll take a POI.
Can you please make it clear how your system is going to work? Who will be responsible for this system? How will the system look like? What principles are you trying to fulfilling? And like lawsuits already exist. Tell us how your lawsuits are going to.
Thank you. I literally spent 1 minute explaining our model. If you listen to it, I bet you would be able. Basically, it is about filing lawsuits. It's about enforcing strict laws to the judges, and it is about actually forming panels that come from different backgrounds. And these judges are going to adhere to these laws because they care about their reputation, because they care about their jobs. Now, our argument, using computer algorithms is very harmful for three main reasons. One, algorithms can be biased, and this is directly clashing with what the team on the other side of the House has mentioned. Even if a variable such as race is taken out of the sentencing algorithm, the system could still cluster a seemingly random group of people on the basis of other signs, such as place of residence or IP address, which would point to the same minority groups. Also, take the example of Compass, an American algorithm that was used to only help judges. An investigation was published and it unraveled that the algorithm was biased towards African Americans. Now imagine how the harms will be multiplied if it completely replaced human judgment. Notice that on our side of the House, there are biased judges and non-biased judges, which means that that some bias can happen. And we told you that we can start to get rid of this bias by our mechanisms. Whereas on the other side of the House, one biased algorithm will always remain biased. So basically taking them on their best case, even if bias exists on our side of the House, it is much lesser than the bias that occurs on their side of the House. Reducing bias is exclusive to our case because, for instance, you can't file a lawsuit against a judge who is biased, which means that bias can be minimized on our side of the House, but it's never possible to file a lawsuit against an algorithm. I'd like to further elaborate on a thing that they never mentioned in their model. They never tell us who designed this algorithm. They never tell us from where this algorithm come from. If the designers of this algorithm themselves were biased, the bias remains on their side of the House. We are the ones who actually make contributions to removing bias and reducing it significantly. But secondly, though, even if this is not the case, an algorithm can accurately calculate possibilities because it can take into consideration the unique variables of each situation. This is quite problematic because we are generalizing a single algorithm to solve every given case, which will eventually lead to bias as well. But thirdly, though, the way algorithms work is very vague. This is because algorithms are hackable. No matter how strong they get, studies prove that machines are now hackable. This will incentivize murderers or gangs to hire top hackers that can infiltrate the machines and change its behaviors, which will result in a highly unfair approach that will again increase the risks deemed to society. What is the impact of the previous reasons? The solution that the other side of the house proposed does more harm than good because more biased and faulty decisions will be made. Many vulnerable people will be sentenced much longer than they deserve, and many innocent people will be sentenced much lesser than they deserve, and lead to an unfair criminal. This will lead to an unfair criminal justice system. Their approach won't solve the flaws that already exist in the criminal justice system, but it will also worsen things up. Which brings me to my second question, which is about why is our solution justified and exclusive? Two reasons. One, human judges can consider more factors than algorithms, like mental stability of the convict when sentencing. This means they do know when rehabilitation should be considered as a go-to choice. Secondly, human judges can understand the offender's intent. Take the example of a person lying about their home address to get their children into a better school district. We think that these cases need a human mind to understand them, to understand the person's position. Did this person genuinely want to hurt the victim, or did the victim break into this person's house and they killed them as a matter of self-defense? We firmly believe that these things are exclusive to our side of the house because only human judges have an understanding and a basic understanding of human psychology. An algorithm won't differentiate between someone who stole out of need and someone who stole because they are greedy, and would sentence both the same, while the person who stole out of need can be rehabilitated and should be allowed to seek help. As an impact on our side of the house, we help the vulnerable individuals and the ones who are mentally unstable. We allow them to go to rehab, but on their side of the house, they're going to be treated harshly and harmed. My second speaker will further elaborate on the unique role of human judges. For all these reasons, I beg you to vote for opposition.
Thank you very much to the speaker for opening the debate on the side of opposition. We can just take one moment to make our notes. That would be great. Okay, is a second speaker from proposition ready? Sorry, I didn't hear that if something was said. Second speaker, are you ready?
Hello?
Hello. Ah, you're back. Perfect.
Yeah. Sorry, my internet was kind of inconsistent, but I'm back now.
No problem. If you have any issues with the internet, feel free to, if you have to turn off your camera, do so, but it would be preferable if you can keep it on, but we completely understand.
No, fine. I think we can proceed.
Perfect. In that case, I will start the stop clock as soon as you start speaking.
3, 2, 1. Panel, realize there are 2 questions that are left unanswered from our first speech. We gave them 2 bodies to tell us why the criminal sentencing is something that is so exclusive that we shouldn't use AI in them. We told you literally there are already systems which use criminal use AI to fulfill its objective, and they work quite successfully. Secondly, what's really exclusive about human beings being part of sentencing individuals? Understand the difference between conviction and sentencing, and this will be the analysis to disprove what they were saying in the 7 speeches, right? So Understand, the first model, they tell us they do three things. One, they'll do lawsuits. Understand that lawsuits do exist even in the status quo. Tell us how their lawsuits are going to be like mutually exclusive, that they're going to be effective to serve effective sentencing. Secondly, they will suspend judges. What system will this work like? Because we understand now, there is accountability towards judges, but these problems still do exist. What kind of mutual accountability are they going to bring in this system to prove that judges are going to be effective in sentencing, right? Who will choose these judges? How will the system of convicting these judges or suspending them look like? And what principles are they trying to achieve, right? Understand that currently there are systems that already put them accountable, but they still seem to be ineffective because it's generally human weaknesses which do exist to make the system ineffective. And that's why we want to replace them either ways. But thirdly, they're going to select diverse panel. Understand that panel is usually appointed in this same society, which is at most times biased. Tell us how you're going to remove this bias in terms of appointing judges that are going to be effective towards serving the system. Because at most instances, even the minor judges are usually few in a society to prove or to necessarily provide justice to those minorities who are constantly oppressed. Will tell you that their model does not work because most of their model is just what happens in status quo, but using different words. Tell us why it's really exclusive, right, to our model. They have three arguments in today's debate. First, they tell us using AI is harmful, and they bring out a point of bias. And they say there's likely going to be less bias on their side just because they have non-biased judges and biased judges. So just because they're non-biased judges, they think biasness is going to be mitigated. We think that's false because you understand, law in itself is impartial. But what makes necessarily impartiality not exist in society, it's the way that law is going to be implemented, which is necessarily how it's going to be mutually different from our side. We tell you that these systems will be inputted by something that is impartial, which can necessarily make them impartial in the first place. Impartiality comes with a derivation of impartiality as far as machines are concerned. We tell you human beings have partiality is in the implementation, I think problematic. Secondly, they tell us AIs are hackable. We tell you that hacking is likely going to be mitigated. In essence, if we want to compare greedy judges or judges who are most times easily manipulated towards not serving justice in society. We think even hacking is, if even hacking is the biggest problem, we take them at their best and tell them that hacking is likely going to be mitigated because the systems which already proves that hacking can be something that can be completely assured. And these things are like things like tax systems. Don't let the movies that you watch blame your mind and make it seem as if hacking is something that is easy. Security system can be advanced in such a way that it cannot occur. We think thirdly, human judges necessarily individuals which will be involved in making conviction, but I think sentencing should be exclusive towards how these systems are going to work. We think that is necessarily what came from our speech, and other rebuttals will be engaged with my substances, right? So I have two arguments today in this debate. And my first argument is based on reliability, which has necessarily 2 points of analysis. The first point of analysis is computer AIs are oftentimes reliable than human judgment. This comes under 2 points of analysis then, right? You need to understand in the status quo where human judgment decides sentencing of different individuals, there are certain flaws and inevitable circumstances and variables which supposedly make it unreliable, right? Understand that the current system has those justice value like integrity and social equity, which loses the whole point of why we have a justice system. In our first speech, we have told you how effective justice is going to be served when this system is going to be implemented. Here, I'm going to show you how this system is going to be unreliable in the first analysis of corruption. Understand that. On the basis of how this system works, corruption is not going to be practiced, or corruption is highly going to be mitigated. Understand that computerized systems, which are oftentimes transparent, have the least of ability to be manipulated in comparison to relying on a human being, which is most times greedy and non-fulfilling, and even certain instances nepotist on some interests. So I think human factors, which tend to exist in an impartial system as justice, makes it such that proper reliability is not going to be attained. We tell you that we're more likely to depend on a system which is transparent and has the impartial system which is inputted to it to bring final justice and integrity. I think trust is likely going to happen in our society more. We think this has been proven when the machine of risk assessments was tested in Wisconsin, which proves that, integrity is likely going to be highly influence the system, especially if it's transparent, and that is something that we likely stand. Second point of analysis, reliability in terms of perception and bias will be attained. Panel, understand, in most instances, the justice system is but oftentimes filled with perceptive judgments, which sometimes are not necessarily effective to bring good and precise sentencing, right? Understand that even in conviction, some individuals can be given harsher sentences with regard of their color, or sometimes you find a Black individual who committed a non-violent crime given a harsher sentence than an individual who committed a violent crime, which is white in a society. And a very good example of this is what happened in Compton, when a Black individual, even if he had like certain identical circumstances, were given a harsher sentence than a white person. All this happens because of the biased perception which exists in human beings, which can only be solved when an impartial body is coming to replace it. We think law is impartial, but implementation is unjust. And we tell you that implementation can only be just when we have law inputted in systems that can be just. Justice comes with an impartiality that can only be achieved when effectiveness of non-bias is improved in this machine. And that is why we tell you that law, that will tell you law, history of crime and evidences are likely going to be things that are going to be inputted in this machine to be effective. Yes, POI.
How exactly do you think a black box algorithm that even its engineers doesn't know how it works will be more transparent than a human judges who understand the incentive and all human factors?
We tell you how the systems work is not necessarily rocket science. We tell you these systems are just inputted with impartial laws, which are transparently made in a society. And when they're inputted with associated information like history of the criminal and evidences, then we have a system which necessarily proves these things to either like balance the sentencing which will happen to an individual. We tell you this is how the system works. Transparency makes the system clear to how to the society on how it's going to work, because the system doesn't work under rocket science. It's an automated machine. We think this is something that is necessarily true. Trade secrecy and all those types of ideas won't exist because systems that will be inputted are going to be transparent to a society. To my second argument, right? It reduces crimes and decars crime in the long run. Currently, some people just commit crimes because they have the ability to manipulate the central justice system. Sometimes it's because of their money, sometimes their relationship, sometimes just because of the person of who you are in a society, maybe big politicians or individuals who have big impacts in the political systems. We think this comes with the humane, empathetic, and manipulative witnesses. We think countries like Tanzania already proves this to exist in the central justice system. And we think this cannot be taken off only if we have a system which is likely going to deter from these things from such happening. We think when a system comes to necessarily avoid these things from happening, we think we're likely going to have a society which these things are not going to exist because it's going to be made transparent to individuals. We think we are going to likely have equality in terms of the sentences that are going to be made in individuals in the society. We think direct manipulation will not exist. We think we are providing a system which is just presentive and attains the objective of what a justice system is supposed to attain. I rest my case.
It seems the chair has dropped out. So let's try to wait a few minutes to see if she can get back in.
I think also the speaker should repeat his speech in this case because if the judge didn't listen to him.
Hi, I'm back. Can everyone hear me? I'm so sorry. I sent a message to the group, well, to the main group to say, hold on, but of course it probably didn't get to you because I don't know how many people have actually read it. I've no idea what happened. The computer just went dead, and I had to restart and quickly join back on. So that hasn't happened before. So I need you to do the last couple of minutes. I think I was up to about 4 or 5 minutes. If someone spotted when it went, I'm so sorry. You just got onto. Hang on. You were halfway through your analysis on reliability, and you were talking about the issues with artificial intelligence, the reliability basically of judges versus artificial intelligence. You were moving into your primary substantive and you were just concluding your first substantive point.
Okay, cool.
I'm
cool.
so
I
sorry.
have how many minutes for?
Sorry?
Fine. So I have 4 minutes, right?
Yeah, let me just go back to getting a stopwatch and everything else if because I don't know where mine everything closed when the computer closed.
It's fine.
Just give me 1 moment and I will get back everything to you. Aha, all right, stop clock. Was not expecting that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
I think it was expecting an update and the laptop just decided to go to do the update and just turned off. That's the only guess I can have. I don't, otherwise I literally have no idea why that happened.
Cool. Okay.
Right, can you see that stop clock?
Yeah, I can see it.
Perfect. Let me just close my email so that you're not seeing that as well. Let me just get everyone back in full screen gallery. What I'm going to do, because I obviously can't jump to, say, 4 minutes, you'll just have 4 minutes on the timer, if that makes sense. I'll start you at 4 minutes.
Cool.
And are the other judges happy with 4 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Otherwise, I can go for less if you think it was less than that, because obviously I didn't see exactly when it ended.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Just a question.
Yep, no problem.
Ask him a POI. Should we also repeat the POI?
Yes, actually, if you can ask it, and can the speaker make sure if you accepted it at the point when I didn't hear it, please can you accept the POI again?
Okay.
All right,
Cool.
great.
If that'd be all right, so I can give it full credit rather than it being out of context if you mention it now. So like I said, I'll start it for 4 minutes, and obviously your protected time will end at 3 minutes, which would be the equivalent of 7 minutes, if that makes sense.
Cool.
Okay. I will start as soon as you start talking.
3, 2, 1. So after showing you how the system is going to be reliable in terms of upholding integrity inside the whole central justice system and how corruption is likely going to be mitigated when greedy judges at the status quo are going to be replaced, I think let me tell you why reliability is going to be attained in terms of perception and removing bias, which is likely exists in the status quo panel. In most instances, the central justice system is often filled with perceptive judgments, which sometimes are not necessarily effective to bring good and precise sentencing, right? Understand that even if conviction of some individuals can be given harsher sentences, even if it has identical circumstances. Understand, in Compton, a white person who had the similar circumstances in terms of police brutality was given less harsher sentences than a black person which had less police brutality. You think this is something which already proves how biasness and perception already exists in a society, right? All that happens in terms of bias perception, which exists within human beings, can only be solved when you have an impartial body implemented. Law is impartial, but its implementation is unjust. We tell you that implementation can be just only if we have something that is likely going to be impartial or more of like partiality existing within it. We tell you justice comes with impartiality, which can only be achieved when effective and non-biased information is inputted within machine, and that's why we are more than happy to input law, criminal history, and evidences which prove why this person is either guilty after its conviction. We tell you that we are more likely to eradicate trade secrecy, which is likely going to exist when they argue this machine will have trade secrecy. We think they are transparent, and individuals likely get to know what is really happening and how decisions are likely going to be made when the system's automated with this information. We think accountability and transparency still exist within the systems. Tell us why the systems don't have this. Yes, POI. Yeah.
Do you think that a black boxed algorithm is better than a transparent judge while serving his, judgment?
Okay, understand that. How these machines work isn't necessarily rocket science, right? How this machine makes decisions comes with justifications on why these decisions are made on a particular way. You think this sorts of AI even give more clear and more effective justifications to why certain cases have been sentenced in a certain way. We think this type of transparency, which is likely going to not exist in terms of bias and its impartiality information inputted in it, we think it's more effective than a human being. It's likely going to be mitigated. And I've told you in our first argument how integrity is even lost in the status quo and how we're going to replace that with systems which are more effective, right? So let me go to my second argument, which says it reduces crimes and deters crimes in the long run. Currently, some people just do crimes because they have the ability to manipulate the central justice system. understand that just because some individuals have money or certain relationships, or in fact, like just because they're a big politician in a particular system, they have the ability to manipulate the empathetic and manipulative weaknesses which exist in human characteristics. We'll tell you that countries like Tanzania prove this to be true. In the worst case, countries like Malawi have also proved how this thing is worse, right? We think we cannot get away with individuals having less harsher sentences just because they have the ability to manipulate it. We think if you have a system which was explained by Hussein in 2 minutes of the speech, the information that is going to be inputted, we think we're going to have a system which is going to solve this problem. We think direct manipulation and inferred manipulation is going to be manipulated. It's going to be avoided in the central justice system. We think we're going to have a system which is just, preventive, and meets the objective of what the central justice systems has to achieve. We think 4 things have been done. 1, the minorities in a society receive the justice in a society which receive justice, which are constantly at most times oppressed. Secondly, we will serve effectively the cause and the aims of justice. Thirdly, transparency and accountability of the justice system will still be effectively practiced, and we think best solves this problem. Never been proud to propose. Thank you.
Great.
Did you get that?
I did. I got all of it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for bearing with me and for handling a tricky situation very well. Thank you to all the speakers for that, actually. Just give me and the other judges 1 moment. I probably need slightly longer than they do because they've probably already made their notes. 1 second. Perfect. Thank you very much to the speaker. And now we move to the second speaker from opposition to continue the case.
Okay, is my voice clear? Am I audible?
Yep,
okay.
I can hear you.
So, okay. My speech starts in 3, 2, 1. Side proposition comes out here today with a completely contradictory case, all in the name of justice. They don't know who will design their algorithm, which is suddenly perfect and makes correct decisions all the time. They say humans are bad and can't make decisions. They say humans are biased, but will still allow them to lead the conviction process. They say that previous cases are built on biases, but we will still be basing our algorithm on patterns from those previous cases. Side proposition, please do choose a case. And until you choose one, we can't really engage with you. So what will I be doing in my speech? First of all, several pieces of rebuttal, and then I'll be moving on to my substantive. But before I move on, I'll have to have several pieces of clarification. They started by asking us about how will we remove bias from our panel and who will those panel be. First of all, I tell you, you want us to clarify who are the members of our panel or without even telling us who will make your own algorithm. Before you ask us this, tell us who will program your algorithm, who will make it. How will it also work? Like, how is it supposed to sentence people? You give us none of those explanations. You tell us it will be based on previous patterns. We told you those previous patterns are biased. So your algorithm is going to be biased as well. But I will still answer your question though. How will we remove bias from the panel? We told you the panel will come from different races, different political affiliations, different backgrounds. So that means that they are less likely to be biased. An African-American judge is less likely is not going to be biased towards an African-American person. So if we have an African-American judge on the panel, excuse me, am I audible? Okay, if we have an African-American, if we have an African-American judge on the panel, he is not going to be biased towards a person of his own affiliation, of his own. That is why having a panel working together which does its best to mitigate bias. Second of all, they ask about accountability, which I will actually address in my arguments. So before I move on, I have several things on their model. They had no idea how their model happens. First of all, they say it will be based on rules. We have 2 circumstances. Either they are based on rules, and we tell you you have no rules, you have no general guidelines that are capable of determining every single case. That is why we have human judges in the first place, because there are no general rules that are capable to encompass every single case. You can't have rules, and second of all, if it was based on former patterns, former bias, you are continuing the biases I've already explained. Second of all, they said that security systems can't be hacked. That is completely false. I tell you, the U.S. Army military itself was hacked at the beginning of this year, and you tell me that a simple sentencing algorithm can't be hacked. And then they started by talking about speed. They said that in their first speech, they said that their side is faster. However, we tell you that our side is more accurate. We think that the accuracy in our case has a greater depth of impact than their speed. Judge, tell me, which do you prefer? Do you prefer to be sentenced quickly, or do you prefer to be sentenced correctly and accurately? The first point was the fourth of trust and transparency. They said that people won't be they would trust more of they would be more trusting towards an algorithm because algorithms give clear justifications. So you're telling me the computer that sentenced me is supposed to come up to me and tell me I sentenced you because that how is this going to happen? They give no analysis. And second of all, I tell you, how are they supposed to trust the algorithm if they don't trust the people who made it? And the third of all, even if they did, people don't trust things that they don't understand. If they don't understand how this algorithm is made, they're not going to trust it. Before I move on to my substantive, I'll take your points. Quickly, please. I can't hear you.
In an instance where we would allow for the prosecution to be included in the system, would you allow for the proposition to pass?
I can't hear you. Okay, I'll move on. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. So my second argument is about the role of humans in courts. In my argument, I'll be showing you all the negative effects of increased dependence on automation in courts. Using an algorithm to decide the final ruling on criminal sentencing raises questions about the validity of those rulings that were, after all, decided by a program and a series of mathematical analysis. My first speaker showed you why algorithms can't always make valid sentences because of the many concepts that can't be included in their formula and can't be calculated, things like incentive need, etc. In my argument, I'll be taking them on their very best scenario that algorithms were found successful, which we proved wasn't true. But even if it was, I'll be showing you how the motion would be allowing technology to take over with unintended consequences and how all of this leads to removing accountability in courts. Law is based on ethics and morality, which humans have but by machines. So if you would be implying that algorithms are better than humans in ethics and morality, which is the one thing that sets humans apart from machines. Not only that, if you think they are more efficient in sentencing first, then what? Then they're more efficient in convicting, and finally every other task that humans are required in. You would be increasing your dependence on machines. So why is this bad? Because machines in the end have the capacity to malfunction or behave in unpredictable ways. As with all forms of technology, this can lead to unintended consequences that may go far beyond anything the designers ever envisioned. Take the 2010 flash crash of the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index. The action of algorithms helped create the index single biggest decline in its history, wiping nearly 9% of its value in minutes. But the algorithm that amplified the problem didn't make a mistake. They followed their own logic in a way that created a downward spiral for the market. Now imagine such a situation in court, this time with an increased dependence on automation and literally deciding the fate of a human life. It isn't the stock market that is at stake here, panel. It is the possible mistaken sentencing of a human. I tell you, even if they are partially able of solving issues of bias, they come with unintended risks that can't be accounted for. While on our side, we begin solving the issue by reducing bias and allowing judges to be held accountable for their actions, because you can actually sue this judge. We give you an exclusive solution that does not come with future implications. Second of all, before I move on, I'll take your point quickly, please.
Ma'am, in an instance where we allow the resentencing...
Can somebody else ask the point, please? I can't hear you. I'm really sorry, I really can't hear you. So moving on to my second point, giving algorithm decision-making powers over human cases also raises a fundamental issue of accountability, or holding somebody responsible for the mistakes they do in sentencing. So what does this do? First of all, you no longer know whom to hold accountable for mistakes in sentencing and conviction. How can you hold an algorithm accountable for their mistakes and we prove to you that they may make many? You just can't. It's like holding a car accountable for a car crash. You can't blame the car, you blame the driver. However, whom do you blame if the driver wasn't able to steer the wheel? How do you blame a judge that didn't have a say in sentencing? You lose accountability on your side of the house. You lose accountability. In our world, judges maintain autonomy in sentencing, thus any mistakes would be held onto them. They can be held accountable for any mistake in the sentence. Why is accountability important? Because it prevents having a program as a scapegoat for bias and systemic discrimination. On your side of the house, a programmer can be biased in their own program, and then people would tell the defendant that, oh, you were sentenced by an algorithm. Since an algorithm can't be biased, your sentence must be true. That way, the system on which an algorithm sentencing is biased in itself itself, but since you were sentenced by an algorithm, it definitely must be fair. What does this do? It does not allow the case to be revisited. On our side, a case can be revisited because a program would give you the same output again and again, so you can't actually revisit the case. In our world, you can change judges, you can be trialed by another set, you can file an appeal. So what is the impact? In their world, systemic injustices remain. Those poorly judged by a mistake of calculating have no other way to get the justice they deserve. Human judges should retain their place as the final arbiters at the apex of any legal system. In practical terms, humans should ultimately choose what they consider a morally superior interpretation, proud to oppose. I'm really sorry about the whole point things, but I really wasn't able to hear her. I'm extremely sorry. I wish somebody else was able to ask it.
Yeah, no problem. It was completely fair enough in that situation. If speakers are really incurring difficulty being heard, in that case, you can potentially put the POI in a chat. We're trying to avoid it as a general method because obviously it's really difficult, especially for the judges and the speakers, to follow it. But in situations where your bandwidth is causing you huge problems and the speaker cannot hear you, that is an option for you. But we understand in these circumstances that everyone is doing their best, and as proved by my disappearance, technology isn't always helpful. So apologies to the speaker who couldn't get their POI heard.
Really sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Just give me one moment. Great. Thank you very much to the speaker, and we move back to team proposition and their third speaker to continue their case.
Yeah, sorry, just had a bit of technical difficulties.
It's okay.
So just give me a minute. I'm just ready my papers. Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm sorry. Is it possible for you if you say a sentence? Because I guess his voice is a bit choppy. I don't want that to happen. Can you just test your voice?
Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me?
Are you able to turn your audio up at all? It's a little quiet. It's I can hear you, but you are a little quiet.
I could just try speaking louder.
Will that work for me? Is that okay for the other team?
That's better, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just a second.
Zaifa, your audio is very eating. So if possible, get some headphones or something, because it's sometimes good and it's sometimes bad.
Yeah, I generally use headphones, but Windows drivers have become an issue. So because of the last update, they don't seem to be connecting very well. So yeah, that's a whole separate thing.
You're a lot clearer now. Whatever you've just done, you're a lot clearer.
I really haven't done anything. Let's just hope it stays this.
Yeah, okay, and now you're gone.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, now.
All right. I'd like to start off my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, let me remind Team Syria on how racism works. It's a system where people of color in any system work like this. It purports faces of oppression that are exploitation, marginalization, powerlessness, cultural imperialism, and violence. Powerlessness is the very harm that is elevated on opposition due to a system where only their minor repairs may exist like they want. What does this mean? On side opposition, there are only minor fixes on minor issues. They do not fix all the issues that are at hand. Now, I'd like to go on by asking a few questions, a few things that have to be cleared up in this debate. Things like how they don't solve bribery on their side of the house. There is still general corruption on their side of the house. The only systematic thing that they do is say, we'll try employing less biased members to judge. But we respond to that and we say, there is still the opportunity to bribe these people. There is still the opportunity for you to use your influence as an influencer and change these people. to mention the fact that my second speaker also came over here and asked very critical questions like who finds these judges? What is the guarantee that these judges are not biased? What is the guarantee that these judges are not corrupt? They don't answer any of these things. So these things still stand on their side of the house. Corruption, bias, elitism, nepotism, and many other issues are existent on their side of the house. There is no guarantee that they fix any of these things. But the next thing that we have to come over here and ask is their house not status quo with extra steps? That is an issue because they have just said that we would enforce more strict, stringent policies. And when they said they were talking about these more strict, stringent policies, all they said was, oh, if a judge makes a wrong decision for 2 weeks, we might kick him off the team. Now, you tell me, when somebody goes to jail for potentially 20 or 30 years because of their color or their face, and when a judge goes out of work for 2 weeks, what is worse on their side of the house? These are questions that we have to pose to the side proposition. Then, let me come to my harms and clashes in this debate. The first of which, I think we should talk about the harms sides of the house. First of all, let's start with a big issue. It's a big clash. On their side of the house, the harms are not unique, neither are they significant. I mean, they're unique and not very significant. See, on their side of the house, they only solve a few small problems that don't actually need that much engagement. Their debate is very small. Their debate is not very wide, and it's not very like what's it called? It's not like they're being brave with what they're saying. Also, they don't solve anything significant on their side of the house. Really, they just try to say that we would make it stricter and we'd hope that people follow and fall in line. Not only that, but their case isn't particularly compelling either. It's not like they have any clear justification. Furthermore, it's just status quo with extra steps. So if we were to try putting this on a widespread belief, we don't see this working in many other countries. If you were to tell a judge to be stricter, that just means people pay more money to the judge. Do you understand how your side of the house does not work? And they would still have to follow, and they would still have issues such as corruption on their side of the house, right? They also come over here and they ask us very silly questions like, so the first thing that we'd have to tell you is you can update an algorithm. At least that's a plausible, what's it called? They tell us things like a programmer could be biased. What if the programmer is supposed to be biased? We tell you, no, that isn't actually a real issue because the programming is based off the laws. So if it is biased, then the laws are biased. Like we said, we would follow a set of rules. The rules that we were talking about in that instance were obviously the laws and the constitution of the country, but yet they come over here with the curb to say, no, it's not a brave idea. What is the possibility of it being hacked? Which my second speaker actually talked about to some degree. Because see, this is not a database, right? This is an algorithm. It's like a math question. How do you hack a math question? That is something that we have to pose to side opposition because they don't really think about what they're saying when they're saying this stuff. They say some other very crazy things like, algorithms can't calculate incentives. But this singular statement that came out from the second speaker is the debate itself, an incentive. That is the issue. On our side of the house, the one thing that we want to have is free, fair judgment that is universal, judgment that cannot be bent. We would be the key administrators of all this judging of people. On their side of the house, they come and make the concession in their second speak and say, algorithms can't calculate incentives. Do you understand the audacity of saying that? What they're essentially saying when they say an algorithm can't calculate incentives is they're saying that an algorithm doesn't understand when it should let a case slide. That is the issue on our side of the house. The potential ability for people to literally bend the laws, the constitution of the government to make it favor them. That is the issue on our side of the house. But yet, we still have to talk about this debate. Moving forward, the second biggest clash in this debate was the idea of fair and consistent judgment, or rather justice versus trial and error human judgment. That is to say, on our side of the house, at least the one thing that we can advocate for is the fact that our judgment and justice of these people will be consistent. Not to mention the fact that an algorithm can't look at your face, nor can an algorithm look at the sort of situations that are looked at. See, an issue and a side clash of this point is the idea that side opposition bring in this debate. Side opposition take a very long amount of time saying there are other external factors that a judge could look at. But at the end of the day, the one thing that matters most in sentencing is evidence. On our side of the house, the only thing that we care about is the evidence that was shown when a murder was committed. When we look at the evidence, we don't care about all the oppression that was faced by this 15-year-old child. We look at the evidence. Because at the end of the day, the difference between the last 24 hours and the last 15 years of that child was that in our system, he becomes a cold-blooded murderer after 24 hours. That is an issue that we do not stand for. We do not let people slide based off the certain differences that they had in their upbringing or maybe their financial background, because that is unfair to everyone else. That is unfair to the same person that probably drove someone over and had a lesser time because he was drunk. That is unfair under all circumstances, and it's something that we can't advocate. But yet we also have to understand that the current status quo is more trial and error more than everything. How many black men will go to jail completely innocent before we finally decide that it's time to make a change and allow for somebody who is clearly unbiased? How many black men will go to jail unfairly? We pose this question again to the third speaker, apart from the other questions that we've had to pose to them. Now, with less than a minute left of my speech, I want to talk about the differences of the two worlds. Let's look at our worst case scenario and their best case scenario. On our worst case scenario, you could potentially be hacked. On our worst case scenario, only judges know about simple psychology. Thus, the judges can make the best call because the judges know what it's like to show remorse. On their best case scenario, there is still nepotism, there is still bribery, there's still political influence, and there's no guarantee of no bias. At least we can guarantee on our side of the house that we're being free and fair towards all parties, something that side prop opposition not once proved to us how they can do well. That being drawn, we should look at this comparison. On our side of the house, the only things that they can complain about is the potential ability to hack and how judges can show remorse, to which we say, not only is it completely inaccurate that you can hack an algorithm, but furthermore, we don't care about the background information because the only thing that should matter when you are sentencing somebody, a criminal, is the evidence that has been pitted against them. That is something that we've made very clear across our past two speeches. And that is why we have to put a pressure on third opposition speaker to come and clear these questions and make us understand. So with that, I tell you, honorary judges, vote for side proposition if you want to vote for free and fair security of justice and judgment.
Thank you very much. Give the judges a moment to consider their notes. Right. Okay. If everybody's ready, I would like to invite the third speaker from the opposition to conclude their substantive case.
Just a minute, please.
No problem.
Am I audible if I speak like this?
I can hear you. I assume the other judges can too, if I can.
All good.
Just a second. So, my speech starts in 3, 2, 1. The main flaw with Prop's case today is that they are trying hardly to solve a problem they think widely exists. But the main problem with this is that they're doing this too late. What we heard today from Team Tanzania was a lot of claims without any real-life example, without any mechanism, without explaining how the world looked like. They wanted us to have a clear analysis on who our panel will be, when they had zero analysis on who provides the algorithm, who puts the inputs, and how it works. So proud to oppose. In my speech, I'll be circulating around two main questions in which I will be including all the clashes that happened in today's debate. So, on to the first question: Can algorithms solve the existing problem? So, We think this is wildly important since the only main argument side of proposition had today was that algorithms are needed because firstly, human judges are racist and human judges are corrupt. Since as long as we prove algorithms cannot solve this and judges are and we can solve judges' problem, we win today's debate. Now, what we heard from them under the efficiency of algorithms. Firstly, we heard that algorithms will only be used in sentencing, i.e., the last step in convicting someone. So, firstly, we have a clear response for this that we gave you, which is this has zero impact in today's debate. Why is this? Firstly, because if judges were really biased to the extent they are saying, which means the convict itself might be biased. So that black man they are trying to defend, they're trying to give him 5 years instead of 15 years, will also still be sentencedly wrong because maybe for example he doesn't deserve to go to jail in the first place. This is the problem with their situation. They can't solve the roots of the problem. But secondly, we think that the people who giving the algorithms the input might still be giving it wrong or biased information. Although note here that we heard no clear analysis from them on how their algorithm will work. So how do we solve this? We solve this problem from its root with having a mechanism that helps us have a qualified judge under strict laws in which we will be prosecuting them if they did anything wrong. So we solve the problem from its roots. Now, secondly, what we heard from them is that algorithms are machine learning AI technology. In their first speech, they literally told us that algorithms are machine learning AI technology. But on their third, they gave up this total thing and they said that algorithms follow only rules and laws. They abandoned their case when they did so. They cannot decide how algorithms work. They cannot decide if they are machine learning or they only abide specific laws. They lost this point. So this is exclusively problematic because it means that they will mainly rely on previous information and when deciding the sentence, which means that bias will still exist because when an algorithm takes into consideration factors like someone's neighborhood, someone's socioeconomic situation, when deciding the recidivism rate of this particular person, this means that bias will still be linked in the algorithm, even if factors like race weren't inside the algorithm itself. That's why we think they cannot solve the bias problem thing. Now, finally, they said that algorithms are transparent, thus they are better. Firstly, we never get any single reason why do they care so much about transparency. But furthermore, we do care about it because we think that without transparency, people will have a clear backlash towards the justice system, which will only happen in their world because they will be giving a black box algorithm, which even its engineers don't know how to solve it. And we ask them that in a POI, which with no clear response or explanation on how they will solve this problem. So they will be giving a black box algorithm that's not clear how it works, the chance to be sentencing all people. We think that this doesn't lead to transparency, but on the other side of the house, it will go to backlash. But further, we think that even if they had a transparency, it's not exclusive to their side of the house because we have more transparency with judges that can have a clear reasons, that can understand the human incentive, and so. Clearly, algorithms won't have any additional benefits on their world. Before I move on to proving on how we can solve the bias problem, I'll take a point.
So in your provision of justice, are you likely to depend on a system which has impartial variables or biased views?
Thank you. I will just be elaborating now on how we won't be having biased views. Why is this? So our world doesn't have biased views as you are trying to say. I refuse to answer this question because it's not the world. It's not our world. So how do we have less bias? So even if what they are saying is true and judges are that biased and are biased that badly, we think that firstly that won't be every single case. But secondly, we think that this will be in the near future. We will see we will see a reduce in this. Why is this? Firstly, because now in the current situation, we can see that social movements are like on the rise and have a very huge impact on all spectrums. What this
has to do with today's case. This means that judges are under direct evaluation from all people around them. So they will not. And since they care about their reputation, they're less likely to take biased decisions that will harm their reputation. So judges care about their reputation, thus they will be less likely to take biased decisions. But secondly, we told you that we will be forcing severe punishments on them. This means that we will have federal prosecutors who actually exist to follow judges and file lawsuits against them to see how they work. We think that this works. We think that we can minimize the bias they have in our side of the house because we can have persecution against them. But finally, because even if this was true in our side of the house, people can revisit the case, people can reopen the case, they can remove the judge, they can do a lot of stuff that can't be done on their side of the house because algorithms will be only taken to be true all the time, so they can't reopen the case and they can't have an appeal, while we can. So we give people the voice to fight back if they were even faced with if they were faced with bias in the first place. So and can't have a beneficial exclusive impact, but all judges' problems can be solved on our side of the house. Now, secondly, why is a human factor needed, and who has a more stable impact? So we already elaborated in our mechanism in each speech. Still, they only had hypothetical questions about it rather than directly clashing with it. So we told you that you will be imposing severe punishments on these judges who break the law. Thus, we think that this is very important in reducing problems like corruption because they care about being a judge. They care about having high-profile cases. They care about their reputation. So when they have the choice to be biased, corrupt, or they are to be respected, we think that they're going with that because they will be prosecuted. But further, we don't think why this is exclusive on our side of the house. So, for example, if someone can bribe a judge, why can they bribe the programmer in the first place? We don't see how they first solve that on their side of the house. So their impacts can only be seen in the short term, and in the near future, they can't have any stable long-term impact. While we do, because it will only take people some time to see how algorithms don't work clearly. And as the chair said today, technology is not always helpful. Never been so proud to oppose.
Time. Thank you very much. Take a moment. Okay. Reminder that reply speeches are 4 minutes and they are all protected. So I would like to invite the opposition reply speaker to present and conclude the case for the opposition.
I just need a second.
Okay.
Okay, am I audible?
You are.
Great. My speech starts in 3, 2, 1. Team proposition is expected to provide a clear model in today's debate. They provided us with zero mechanism on how these algorithms are going to work. What variables do these algorithms include when sentencing the convict? Why is their solution exclusive and that we can't improve the criminal justice system on our side of the house? Who designed these algorithms? Was this approach implemented before anywhere in the world? So many questions that were unanswered by the team on the other side of the house. The only thing they actually tell us, oh, that's unnecessary. How is it unnecessary when your entire case is based on this model? We tell you that from the very beginning of today's debate, Team Tanzania lost it. Panel, we had a clear burden, which is paving the way into creating a fairer criminal justice system. We believe that we proved that throughout our speeches. On our side of the house, on the other side of the house, we don't really know where they are going with their case because they do not clearly address the problem that they want to solve, nor set a burden that they have to achieve. Team Proposition provided us with a very wishy-washy case in today's debate. Whereas on our side of the house, we told you that we guarantee judges are going to stick to our model because to stick to these stricter laws because they also care about their reputation. They care about keeping their jobs as well. Zero engaging with this idea. With that in mind, I have one question to ask in this speech. Who creates a fair criminal justice system and reduce bias? We asked them clearly in a POI, if you care so much about getting rid of bias in the criminal justice system, especially in sentencing, why is it that you keep judges decide whether the person is guilty or innocent, knowing that the current system is biased? We receive no actual engagement with this idea. Comparing both sides of the house, ours solve the problem from its roots, whereas on their side of the house, more innocent people are going to be sent falsely to jail. But secondly, they gave us this ridiculous example on how they serve justice by sentencing a juvenile and 15 years old according to their crimes. And that is the only important thing in a sentence should be the evidence. Whereas we tell you that firstly, they do not realize how this is harmful for these people because we tell you we actually sentence these people in a proportionate way to their crime. And we look at their incentive because secondly, an algorithm can't really differentiate between whether this person stole out of need and whether this person killed someone because they wanted to defend themselves. They never engage with this. They tell us that, oh, both should be sentenced the same, which is extremely harmful to their side of the house. We tell you we actually sentence people according to what they did, and we look to the circumstances that are related to the crime. We never punish someone according to knowing that their incentive we never punish someone harshly, knowing that their incentive was only to defend themselves, for example. On our side of the house, with our mechanism, we get everyone to be punished in a proportionate way to what they did. We also allow the vulnerable people and the ones who are mentally unstable to seek rehabilitation and other forms of support. Whereas on their side of the house, this is non-existent because they clearly said that in their third speech that the only thing they care about is evidence, which is completely immoral by all means. I tell you, for all these reasons, I beg you to oppose.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'd like to invite the final speaker of the debate, the reply speaker from Team Proposition, to conclude their case and the debate as a whole.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm audible this time. Can you hear me?
I can, so
yeah?
I assume others can too.
Okay, that's good. Sorry, one sec. Okay, starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, dispassion is the very essence of justice, and justice without dispassion is always at risk of not being true justice. Panel, understand that this debate starts at the point where a person is found guilty. Understand that this debate is not about the conviction process of the justice system, but rather the sentencing process, right? We tell you that this is the case because, one, sentences are given out largely by 1 or 2 judges, 1 or 2 people who are so much more likely to be ineffective in all of the 4 problems that we mentioned to you in my first speech, compared to the conviction process, where a jury of 2 individuals who are much harder to sway, plus all the other processes that go into the conviction process, right? Things such as police investigations, forensic reports, and trials, which are all governed by their own regulations to make them as effective as they can be. So I think that this point that was raised in the debate by Team Syria was very well rebutted by me before Syria even decided to base their whole case on this one point and brought their case to the table, right? They bring to the table a counter system that is basically just a failing representation of the current status quo, right? They tell us that one, we will allow people to file lawsuits. We tell you these already exist. How will their suits be uniquely different? Two, they tell us, oh, we'll improve the selection process of judges and apprehend these judges for wrongful convictions. They give us no analysis on how to make sure that this happens. How judges who work within the system, judges who never ever get punished for wrongful convictions, will actually be jailed on their side. They simply met the mechanism by there's no analysis on how their mechanism actually works, and then claim that we didn't explain our mechanism when I think I spent around 5 minutes and 30 seconds just explaining to you how our mechanism will work, right? But rather, they tell us, number three, we will select diverse judges and panels. Give us no analysis on how they will get enough black lawyers in a country like America where black police are being shot for being asleep in their homes. We tell you that all of the policies that they bring to the table already exist in the status quo, and the problems I spent more than enough time explaining in my first speech still exist despite these policies that they bring to the table. But even if we take them at their best case, we tell you exclusive human attributes such as emotions, which make us susceptible to things such as influence, popularity, racial bias, money, and corruption can never be eliminated as long as humans are involved in the process. Now let's look at what we brought to the table. We bring to you a system that addresses all of the problems I gave out in my first speech. Problems that state opposition doesn't account to. Problems such as discrepancies of sentencing for criminals under identical criminal evidence and circumstances, harsher and longer punishments for non-violent crimes, elitist sentencing, and racial bias. The only rebuttal they bring to the table to the system is one, if you use previous decisions and patterns, then you perpetuate bias. When in my speech did I say we would use previous data? Three things we said we would input into these algorithms would be one, the rule of law, two, evidence at hand, and three, criminal history of the person. And yet they seem to be really zeroing in on this piece of information that we will use previous data, which makes our system biased, right? They accuse us of not telling them how our system will work, but rather, I spent about 2 minutes explaining to you how these systems would work. I told you about what would input and how machine learning works for things such as causation and correlation. We tell you that this is the only effective way of administering justice because it eliminates things such as gender and racial bias. It eliminates things such as being influenced by money and popularity, by being influenced by things such as societal and political pressures, things that are exclusively present in human beings but not in computer algorithms, right? We tell you that people have to spend time in jail without bail. People have to spend weeks and weeks waiting for the sentencing to be scheduled simply because of the fact that human judges cannot process so much information, and it takes too long to schedule a sentence. They tell us, oh, we don't care if it takes so long as it is fair and correct. But there's no analysis on how these systems that they have implemented will make sure that this sentencing is fair and correct. Here we tell you that when people appear to different courts, sentences aren't standardized. So two judges may give out two different sentences, something that does not happen on our side because of the fact that we have standardized punishments for crimes that have been committed under identical circumstances. We lose this debate because they don't give us exclusive analysis on how all four problems we give you are solved on their side. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much for an engaging debate and for, as I said before, bearing with the speakers and myself with our various IT issues, glitches. Congratulations on completing round 3 of the tournament, and I'll be notifying the team so that have we got an all-com in here to move us? I'll let the group know that the debate is complete. So like I said,